Greetings, everybody. How you doing tonight? Mike Smith from Cordial Cables USA, and I have the distinct pleasure of getting to talk to a whole bunch of really great artists, and tonight is no exception. First, I'd like to just welcome you, and we hope these are educational and fun for you. Tonight's guest, Terry Wollman, is both a student and master of guitar tone, as well as a great composer and producer. Tonight he'll share some acoustic guitar live and recording tips for you. And in a special arrangement with Blue Microphones, who is another one of Terry's sponsors, we are so thrilled that they jumped in the pool with us and offered to give away some great items. So the first one is this Blue Yeti Pro microphone right here. It is a fantastic microphone. I'm having a really good time checking it out. And then they're also giving away some of these Mix-Fi headphones. And they're fantastic. I've been using them just a couple of days, and I can't believe how much better they sound than my other headphones. They have amps in them and some things that I don't yet understand, but the versatility of these things is fantastic. So we'll talk more about those later, and we're going to get right to it. Enough yakking for me. I want to hear from Terry. So Terry Wollman has worked with a wide range of artists from Billy Preston, Melissa Manchester, Fifth Dimension, Wilson Phillips, Al Jarreau, Joan Baez, Joe Walsh. I want to hear about that. Kev Moe, Little Richard, Eartha Kitt. And he's got some TV credits on Scrubs, The Tonight Show, and The Late Show. So he's also done some work there. So without further ado, Terry Wollman, I am so happy to see you. Please excuse whatever technological stuff that Facebook was throwing at us there. We had a horrible time trying to get that thing going. So I'm really sorry that did not happen like we would have hoped. So we are live there now, and I'm happy to have you here. Terry, how's it going?
Doing great. I'm doing really well, and this is very typical of what's been going on during the whole pandemic crisis with basically the internet being overloaded. First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you to Cordial Cables and also to Blue Microphones for sponsoring this event. And today we're talking about acoustic guitar technique in the studio and live. There's a lot of similarities and there are differences as well. But my goal is always the same, which is to sound the best that I can and to capture the natural sound of the instrument. I have some audio examples today and a couple video things, some short excerpts to show you. For examples, I have my guitar right behind me, my Taylor 912C, which I'll pick up and play for you in a moment. But in thinking about this, I thought it'd be helpful perhaps to all of you to come up with 10 tips or points of view about how I approach guitar, and also really how I marry technique with emotion and feeling, because at the end of the day, it's still always about the song, it's about the feeling, it's about connecting, with the music, the musicians, the audience, and finding your place in the song. So let me just start by giving you a couple of tips, and then we'll spread them out through our hour together. My first goal, as I just said, tip number one, is to capture the natural sound of the instrument. That applies to all acoustic instruments, whether it's a steel string or a nylon string guitar, a banjo, a cavaquinho, uh, an ukulele, a vihuela, a baritone guitar, which I'll have an example for later in our conversation. But it really is to go for the natural sound. And whether I use a pickup or a mic, I'm always trying to make sure that it sounds like there's a mic on the guitar, that you're hearing some air move, the sound of the strings vibrating and the wood, the natural sound. Now, not everybody's going for that. There are guitar players that are known for putting effects on their acoustic instruments, and that's part of their sound. I've certainly done that on record dates when it fits the track, maybe a big rock production or something where you might want to chorus the guitar. But the thing is, I still always prefer to make the instrument sound like the natural instrument. So that's my goal. And that's what I encourage you to do. Secondly, tip number two, acoustic and electric guitar have the same note, but they're not the same instrument. And what I mean by that is to get the most from your acoustic instruments, I would encourage you to play them in a different way, to approach it in a different way, because they demand different things from you. Uh, for example, uh, with an electric guitar, you have the ability to sustain through a distortion pedal, through an overdrive. There are things electronically that you can do to get more out of a note. I'm not saying that with all of those tools that you still don't have to have technique and really think about sustaining the note for a precise amount of time. But it's also when it's acoustic guitar, there's nothing to hide behind. So however long you play that note is how long you're going to sustain it. Uh, I think, it's hard really to define it more, but I think about it a lot. I notice it. I observe it a lot. Sometimes I'll see a guitar player who is predominantly known as an acoustic guitar player, or the opposite, somebody who's really world renowned as an electric guitar player, pick up the acoustic instrument, and they're they're not getting the most out of the instrument. They still have all kinds of chops and flash and everything, but they're missing the nuances, I think, of the acoustic guitar. So I encourage all of you to look at it differently and listen to it differently. Like listen to the instrument, to every instrument, every acoustic guitar is different, to see what it needs from you to pull the music out of it. So it's kind of an esoteric way of approaching it, but it's something I give a lot of thought to because I'm really hyper aware of it. And another thing, I'm still into using pedals. Like I will use a wah wah pedal on an acoustic guitar, and I have a blast doing that. I do it with discretion. I don't overuse it, but I might play it on one song or a live performance, or certainly in a recording, I might put it in. It's just quirky. It's a little bit different, and the wah wah responds differently to the acoustic guitar than to the electric guitar. So these are just a couple of examples. Uh, Let me give you the third tip, and you can jump in anytime with questions or comments, Mike. The third tip is there's nothing to hide behind when you're playing acoustic guitar. Nothing. It's one of the things I really like about it. It's simply a relationship between the wood, the steel, and you. So it's very intimate, and it's very demanding, but in but it's very rewarding. I would say it's very forgiving. It's forgiving, but it's mostly demanding. I don't want to make this sound harder than it is. It just requires you to step up your game. Um, another. Well, Can I go on with tip four?
Yeah.
Four is kind of speak to that as well. Fret noise, finger squeak, your pick or your hand hitting or scraping the wood. They're all elements that make up the sound of a musician playing an acoustic instrument. And it's your task to embrace, manage, and include all of that at your discretion to include the sounds of the noise with the actual notes. So you're looking beyond the notes. And I've had a lot of experiences where I am recording or performing live, whether it's instrumental music or even with some of the pop acts that I've dealt with and worked with and toured with your a big arena or an outdoor festival, and it's just an acoustic guitar and three singers. And you really need to embrace all of this. Certainly if you're playing outside, there's going to be wind. That becomes part of it also. It all gets incorporated. But the thing is, I really have fun and I pay attention. It's an idea of broadening your awareness. So I pay attention to the sounds. If I'm squeaking, if there's finger squeak moving from one chord to another, I try to, first of all, I don't try. I just make sure that I stay aware of it. And then I make decisions intuitively and consciously, some unconsciously, while I'm playing to manage the sound. Sometimes you can't get rid of the squeak. So if you're going to be squeaking or if you're brushing and hitting because you're playing a very rhythmic figure with a pick and you're hitting the wood, make sure that when you're hitting the wood that it's still in the pocket. That's part of your performance. So the the guitar in some ways, in many ways, is a percussion instrument. It's a pitched percussion instrument. So when you are just smacking the strings or hitting the wood, if your groove is rock solid, whether you with a pick or your finger picking, it becomes part of the magic of the performance and the
Great.
song. So don't ignore all those sounds. Embrace them, manage them, include them,
Great.
and work on the technique so that if you know that you need to get from point A in the instrument to point B, one technique is to use open strings, for example. If there's an open string that you can use as a pivot to change to another position that's far away, use it. Take
Right.
advantage of it. It's very musical.
Right.
I find it really interesting to do that. And in a sense, it's like, hey, look over here. Nothing to see.
Yeah.
That note ring,
Right.
if it doesn't sound like an accident, but you incorporated it into your sentence.
Fabian, are you on there?
Hi, how are you? I'm from
Hi,
Colombia.
Hi, Fabian. How are you?
I'm fine. Do you have any mid-side technique for recording?
Well, basically, I always prefer to use a microphone, although I do have pickups in my guitars. So I have an endorsement, a very long time relationship with Seymour Duncan for my pickups in my instruments. However, this particular guitar, the Taylor, has a Neve pickup. Rupert Neve designed a pickup with Taylor that was specific for this guitar. So what I do
Okay.
is I plug in, here's my Cordial cable, and I'll plug in and go through a preamp. I love tube preamps. So I've got an Avalon tube pre, 737, and then I also have a Neve preamp that's a solid state. And right now, you're hearing me through the solid state through the Neve. I'm not using the pickup for today. This is through this mic, through the blue microphone. I use a lot of different mics. Uh, for my stereo setup, my first go-to are these blue hummingbirds that I have right here in front of me right now. But I use AKG 414. I'll say it again. The AKG 414 that I've had for a very long time, and it's really good for acoustic instruments, especially for mono. Uh, I also have an AKG 451, a pencil mic that I use for my nylon string Ramirez guitar. because it really picks up the nuances of that. But the 414 and the blues are my basic go-tos for recording, either in mono or stereo. And I'm a longtime user of Digital Performer by Motu.
Great. Thank you, Fabian, for your question. We'll move on. And we are going to, at this point, we're going to bring in our friend Kevin Walt from Blue Microphones and have him save us. So so we're going to bring in Kevin from Blue Microphones, who we're so thrilled to have met here recently. So Kevin, we'll get him starting his video. There he is. We have success.
Hey, look at this. Hey guys.
Any little victories we can get, man, I am really happy.
Oh man, I'm sorry I've been sitting here in the dark. I didn't get to see all the goodness. Hey Terry, what's going on, my friend?
Yeah. And by the way, I want to thank both of you, but I also want everybody to know that my philosophy about endorsements, if anybody's ever curious about that, is the key word is not endorsement, it's relationship. It's artist relationships. And it's a two-way street. Today it's a three-way street. And this is the perfect example of the kind of companies that I love working with. The first priority is that the product is world class. Right. You know, for me to be interested in using it, because I'm always striving for the best audiophile sound that I can get in everything that I do, whether it's live or in the studio. Second to that, and it's a pretty close second, is the people that run the companies, the front people that deal with the artists. And case in point, Mike and Kevin, both of you indulged me in this idea to collaborate and co-sponsor this masterclass. And I really appreciate the openness and enthusiasm for you both doing that. I'm curious, without getting too far from technique and what this is about, why did you say yes to doing this and working together?
Me first?
Yeah.
Sure. Hey everybody. You know what we do? I really at Blue, the whole family of Blue, we look for relationships, partnerships with different companies that share the same values and you know, take care of the people they work with, really have pride in what they do. So when you brought this to my attention, you know, I love Terry to death, and I've worked with Terry for a few years now, and he's just speaking of world class, that would be Terry. This opportunity came up, and it was just these kind of partnerships where it's just kind of a match made in heaven. So yeah, Blue is very excited about working with you guys.
Well, we feel exactly the same way. We're really happy to have come in contact with you, and as Kevin and I talked about on the phone today, relationships are what it's all about. So before we get back to technique, I did want to publicly and on video thank Kevin and Blue Microphones for being involved with us. You see, I got my Yeti Pro right here, and I've been playing around with it today and really enjoy the sound that comes out of it, and the ability to change the pattern and all that kind of stuff. And these Mix-Fi headphones are unbelievable. So we're going to be playing with those and talking a lot about those. But Kevin, we're going to get back to some technique type of stuff, but I did want to bring you in and thank you personally and
you're very welcome
for being here. And we're going to get back to some technique and how Terry records acoustic guitar. You stick around, okay?
That sounds great.
Thanks, man. See you later.
See ya.
Okay, Terry, let's talk some more about technique.
So tip number 5, and again, if you missed the first 4, go back and take it over from the beginning. You can watch this at your leisure. Live performance is a lot more forgiving than recording, but your tone should never be compromised, and it doesn't need to be compromised. So I want you to think about how to take control of your sound, and the first way is by choosing a well-made instrument. And by that, I don't necessarily mean an expensive instrument. There are some really amazing guitars, certainly made by Taylor as well, but all kinds of companies. I find this with electric and acoustic, that just feel great and sound great. So it's really quite simple. Find an instrument that has a great tone, that really speaks to you, that you feel you connect with, and you get a good sound out of. There are other aspects to taking control of your sound. The other is to take care of your instrument and keep it maintained. Another thing you can do is choose the right strings for the job. And yes, you have choices. Uh, the string company that I am proud to endorse and have been with for years, even before I became an endorsee, is D'Addario. And they're a one-stop for me. They've got strings for almost every single instrument that I have, from lap steel to cavaquinho to electric and acoustic guitars, baritone, high string, nylon. They really have it covered. So find the right string for the right job. Some strings have less squeak, uh, and others are warmer, others are brighter. So you go for what suits you. There's no right or wrong, but know that you have choices. The other thing is picks. Like I use a pretty heavy gauge pick. However, I want you to hear the difference. Here's, so it's a nice tone. But when I'm in the studio, whether it's my studio or another session, I always bring a variety of picks, because a very light gauge pick that you can bend really easily has a sweeter, more feathery touch. So if you hear that, sometimes that'll fit in the mix a little bit differently. So you have choices in picks. Uh, you also pickups, pick gauges, the amps that you use, and of course audio cables, which is why we're here today. I've always used the highest quality audio cables that I could find, and without making this a commercial for Cordial, I was basically introduced to them a couple of years ago at NAMM through another artist, and you guys gave me the cables and told me to put them through the test, and I told you I'd give you my honest opinion, and here we are working together. So I use Cordial cables now on all of my live gigs, and I use the mic cables in my studio. All of these things play a part in you always sounding your best. So use the best gear that you can. It's not always about price. It's not the most expensive. To get something really great, something
Great.
a little bit more, but it will last as well.
Yeah, I do have there's a question that popped up. I struggle with either boomy acoustic sound or anemic if you try to kill the boom. How do you find that happy medium?
Great question. I've been chasing that tail for as long as I've been recording. There's a couple of ways. One is a high frequency boost, or a high pass filter, excuse me. And basically, and I use them all the time when I'm recording. It essentially lops off the lower end of the frequencies that are pretty much room noise and thumpier sounds that you don't need. So you can dial them in and adjust, but with most DAWs, they're going to have some sort of a high pass and a low pass filter. But the high pass is really critical for me in making sure there's a lot of space and air. I really love clarity. I really love transparency. I love for my mixes to be visual and for my guitar sounds to be crystal clear. So wherever the engineer puts them, whether I'm engineering myself or whether I'm recording for somebody and sending them tracks, I want them to be able to just put it in their mix and the low end is carved out. So one of the things about, I've got a few steel string acoustic guitars, including a baritone, which there will be an example of in a few minutes. My Martin D35 that I've had for years has a lot more low end than this Taylor. It's part of the sound. It's a little bit woodier. One of the things that attracted me to the Taylor guitar is that, in a sense, it's already pre-EQ'd. So it's not that it doesn't have a nice bottom. It's a very rich bottom. You know, it's pianistic, but the lower frequencies are already notched out in the design of the guitar. So some of it is the instrument. Here's one other tip: proximity to the mic. Back off from the mic a little bit, or move to the left or to the right. So if you're right in front of the sound hole, like you see this right now, it's going to be boomier. If you move it here, more where the neck joins the body, it's going to be an easier sound to manage. Same thing over here, a little bit away from the sound hole. You can always aim the mic towards the sound hole, but not right into it. So those are my ways of doing that. For live performance, I have a sound buster, the rubber mute that you put inside, so that it keeps you from getting feedback when you're playing at a concert level and you've got the sound coming back, from a monitor directly into sound hole.
Excellent.
So those are the choices, but use your ears.
Yeah.
Use your ears. So essentially mic placement and high pass filters.
Excellent. Okay, got another one that actually this one is from me, and I would like to know about your doubling technique and what everybody's got some version of doubling, whether they play another track or whether they just double that same track and pan it and that type of thing to keep keep the feel of that original track. So, what's your technique for making one humble acoustic guitar sound like more than that?
I have, on occasion, just for the experiment of it, taken a track and copied and pasted it and then offset it by whatever amount of frames, no more than, not even 30 milliseconds, because then it sounds like a Elvis Presley kind of a slapback echo. I'll just move it a little bit. I'll keep the original where it is, and I'll move the double just a little bit later. I nudge it so that it's not phasing. And then when I pan them, it's a little bit richer. If I do that, I'll sometimes make the second one, the electronic double, quieter so that your ear goes to the principal part, and then the depth of it goes to the part that's secondary.
Right.
But that's typically not how I do it. I'm a big believer in double tracking for real. Learning your part section by section. So getting your verses or getting your choruses, if they're exactly the same, do that. If they're not exactly the same, which likely they're not going to be, if you're really thinking about it in advance and knowing that you're going to be doubling it, it will influence what you play on your first pass. Doesn't mean that you're going to play it safe. You're just going to be repetitive. You're going to think more like an arranger,
Right.
knowing that you're going to double it, get richer. So
Right.
I have two approaches to double track. One is that I go for the exact double. So I'll listen back to what I did. I'll be thinking about it in advance so that I can double it more accurately without hurting myself,
Yeah.
hurt myself out. But the other thing is, so then it's an exact double.
Right.
And when I say nothing is exact, because there's a human factor. Certain notes. I'm not a machine. I strive to be like a machine in my pocket, in my groove,
Right.
but there's still the human factor. So that's the beauty of the double track. When you do it live, as opposed to electronically doing it, it breathes.
Right.
So I go for the exact double, and then find the panning. Sometimes it's all the way wide. Sometimes I'll bring it in here. Sometimes they're tighter. I even can, pan them at various places depending on what else is going on, because I want it to be a conversation between all of the instruments. But here's one thing that's really fun about double tracking that I really enjoy doing, which is to not do an exact double, to do an almost exact double, so that the fingerings are the same, the voicings are the same, but I'll pull different strings out, different notes out, so that there's different accents coming out. So if I'm doing this on one part, so I'm bringing out the high E string. That's the focal point of that part. On the second part, I'm going to switch it up.
Right.
So what happens, and we have an audio example of this in a few minutes that we can get to. it percolates. So not to the point where it's distracting, to the point where it's interesting. It's ear candy.
Right.
Little things will happen that'll bring your attention to it. So that's how I approach double track.
Excellent. So Jeremy Gardner, one of our new friends who won our cables. Hey, Jeremy, good to see you here. Jeremy asks, what's your opinion of tone quality on a low action guitar? Usually low action is geared toward beginners, but would one want to record with it?
If it's too low, it's going to be floppy, and you're not going to really get all the tone that you need. I don't mind low action. Uh, like the strings that I use on my acoustic are 12s to 53s. So it's not ultra light. It's considered a light gauge. The ones that I use are the D'Addario EXP16. They're coated. So I like them. They sound really good in the studio. They're phosphor bronze, but they're a little less squeaky.
Mm-hmm.
But the string gauges have a lot to do with it. But I would say don't. I've never had a guitar with the action so low that there's fret buzz. That's when you know it's too low. So
Yeah.
if you're playing a low note and you're getting more buzz than tone, you need to raise the action. I want it to sustain every note to sustain as long as I choose it to sustain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there are two techniques, there are multiple techniques, but there's basically 2 points of view on how to play. One is to let things ring continuously until you hit them again. It's more of a choral effect. And the other is to mute strings and really control them, which is more of a blues approach. I use both. They both work.
Right. Excellent.
So make sure your action is where you can have those options and those choices. If you feel that you've got control of your instrument, then it's not too low.
Excellent. Excellent. We got a couple of examples that you kind of wanted to show us. Do you want to get to those, Terry?
Oh, I would love to.
Okay.
One of them, because I'm talking about, I want to start with a song called "The Blue Pearl," and it's a solo piece that I wrote, and I record a lot of solo guitar pieces. I also record multi-track pieces, instrumental and vocal and everything. So, but when I record a solo guitar piece, and I want to give just a short 30-second audio clip of it, there's a couple of ways to go. One is, bear in mind, this guitar, it's a mono instrument. So if you are trying to get a stereo signal out of it, it's a little unnatural. However, the piano, an acoustic piano, is a mono instrument also, but it's got a wide spectrum, and normally you record it with 2 mics, and you pan it so that you get the full harmonic spectrum across the mix from left to right. So I like to widen the image a little bit when I'm recording solo guitar. There's a couple ways to do it, and I'll be really brief on this and then give you the example. One is just to use stereo mics, like for instance, the Blue Hummingbirds that I have here, so that I create an image, and it's not unnatural. It'd be if you were sitting a couple feet in front of me. And if you were to the left, you would hear it a little bit different than if you were to the right. Another way is just to record in mono, which is how I recorded this piece that we're going to hear. And then I'll use a stereo reverb. So expression that it's a wider image, so that it's not just something in the middle without using up all this other beautiful space in the mix. The third, sometimes what I'll do is I will record both a mono mic, like a 414, and then I will also use the Neve pickup in this guitar and go through a tube pre, and then I've got a blended signal, and I've got the option to bring that in or not. So what I did on this piece, and we'll just take a quick listen right now, is solo mic with a stereo reverb.
Great. This is Blue Pearl, right? That was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So there's an example of a solo guitar recorded with a single mic through an Avalon tube preamp, 737, and then using a subtle stereo reverb to give it to make it sound expensive. Is really what it does. And so there's still the simplicity, but there's the beauty of the instrument. If you notice, and you can go back and listen to this, or you can hear these tunes. The new album is coming out August 15th, Cassini's Last Dance, and you'll be able to go hear it or stream it and hear the nuances of the recording. But one of the things that you're going to hear is finger squeak. So that's me making a decision to incorporate the sound, to control it and manage it, but to incorporate it into the performance. Because otherwise, I'd be spending too much time trying to not make any noise, and then I wouldn't be making any music. And if you listen to a really well-recorded acoustic piano, you're going to hear the dampers come up and down. You're going to hear the foot pedals. You might hear a little bit of breathing from the musician.
Yeah.
A little bit of grunting or singing along.
Or cursing.
Or cursing. Never on somebody else's session because it's their time.
There you go.
So you want to catch the nuances of the instrument. So
Right.
that's that example. The second example I want to share with you is a piece called Buckwheat Sample. And this was kind of an interesting experiment for me because I had the piano part already recorded. It was a solo piece that I'd written, an introduction to the full band coming in. The piano player was Joe Sample. And I thought it would be interesting to turn that into a virtual duet, in a sense, after the fact. So I used a Gibson L7, an old jazz hollow body guitar that I have, which Seymour Duncan built a pickup for it. So it's got a custom humbucker. I don't have it here in the room, but it's a standard just jazz guitar pickup. But he built a pickup for the guitar that matched the sound and the tone without cutting and drilling any holes into it. So I used my Mesa Boogie tube preamp because I'm a big tube guy, just because it breathes. It's more natural to me. Although modeling has come a long way, but I'm still like a purist. But I thought it would be really kind of interesting. I wanted to do something more. And the thing about the L7, the old Gibson L5s and L7s from the 30s and 20s and further back and into the 40s, you got to remember something. The electric guitar wasn't invented yet. That was before Les Paul invented the electric pickup.
Right.
So the thing is, all these old hollow-bodied, big-bodied guitars, they were acoustic instruments. They were designed to be playing chords, in a big band or in a dance band, and they were not mic, they weren't anything. You needed to project, and I thought it'd be really cool to capture that sound. So I thought, I'm going to put a mic in front of the guitar and get that sound of the actual old school hollow body guitar. And then I blended it. And I featured that. I featured the mic sound through the 414. It was before I started working with Blue. And then blended it. And then I blended in the pickup sound a little bit too. So here's a little taste of that. So you can see there's no one rule, there's no one right way.
Okay, here we go with Buckwheat Sample. That's pretty.
Yeah, so that's me breaking the rules. And part of the reason I did that was because there's something real visceral and organic about Joe Sample's piano playing. You can hear the pedals. You can hear him attacking the keys. you can hear even his voice sometimes as I'm talking about. And I thought, well, I want to really join that sonic party. So that's why I favored the microphone in front. And it turned out to be a really cool sound. And, it's just something I thought, I've had some really amazing guidance over the years. And I'm very curious and I ask questions. I'm not afraid to ask a question. So anytime I'm in a studio and an engineer, a seasoned veteran world-class engineer, mics me up or mics my guitar amp or whatever it is and gets this great sound, I ask, what did you do? How did you do that? What do you recommend? And they've basically encouraged me to just say, that, the whole idea of recording acoustic instruments is to take a good instrument, a great instrument, take a great player and put it in front of a great mic and work to where it sounds good and hit record. It's an oversimplification, but that's a really good example of how that works.
Yeah.
I just found the sweet spot, which would be right by one of the F holes in the guitar, and hit record. And the engineer that I mixed with, Peter Kelsey, who's a Grammy and Emmy award-winning engineer, loved it. He more than approved it. He thought it was great, and he said, "Let's feature that." So
Awesome.
let's go to a challenge right now. I mean, they're all fun challenges, but the next piece I want to play for you is called "Once One Moment," and it's a baritone acoustic guitar built by my friend Rick Turner. And the funny story on this is Rick lent it to me. He showed it to me years ago, and I was very curious about it. And he said, "You should take it, try it." And I said, "I'd love to learn how to play it." And it's a baritone guitar is tuned to fourth or fifth lower, so the string generally is tuned. The low E string is tuned down to a B, generally, maybe a C. So I had a low B on this, and there's a lot of squeaks. Because the low strings are like a piano string. They are thick.
Yeah.
It's a bass string, but it's acoustic. It's like I'm saying, there's nothing to hide behind. And I remember asking Rick, I was trying to record with it. I wrote a piece for it, this piece for the instrument. And without dragging the story out too long, I asked Rick, I go, "What do I do about the squeaks? Like, how do I record this?" And he said, well, he goes, the only other people who really record this instrument are Joni Mitchell and Jackson Browne. They both had Rick Turner baritone guitars back then. Taylor makes them now too, but they were a little bit more rare when I first got it. And he said, "So you figure it out and you tell me, because we're all curious on how to do it." So that was a question of technique.
Right.
I really had to again, what we were saying earlier, find the open strings.
Right.
Lighten up. So when I'm moving from a G up to a C, I can't slide all the way up. I need to lighten it. I'm pulling it up. So or making something else louder.
Right. Yeah.
So what I just did was open string. So your attention goes to the harmonic aspect, the chordal aspect of it, and look over here, shiny object. So,
Right.
But this was a real challenge to record, and I wanted you to hear it. Same thing, baritone acoustic guitar, AKG 414 through a Neve 2 preamp. Probably about, average about 9 inches away from the sound hole.
Wow, that's pretty.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm an arranger, and as obviously, as well as a guitar player and a songwriter and record producer. So I arranged the strings for that. And I thought it would be interesting to do that because this was so intimate and it was so unique in the sound of the baritone guitar that I thought it'd be really beautiful. So I did a 10-piece string section and conducted it. I pre-recorded my guitar part and then I conducted it live. And you can hear the squeaks in there, but you also, in a way, adding the live strings to it, you hear more noise. You hear the air coming from the bows, from the instruments. So that's an example, as I said earlier in the conversation, about embracing the sounds and the clicks and the pops and the squeaks of your instrument, embracing it and using it and inhabiting it. So anyway, that's that piece, and it was a little bit challenging to play because of that low B string to move, but I figured it out in composition and in the technique of it. The final example that I want to give right now of this is multi-track, which we were talking about a little bit earlier. I wanted to give an example of something that had a nylon string guitar, a steel string, a high string guitar, and a mandolin. High string, if you don't know, is like a 12-string guitar, but it's just the upper strings. So it's an octave higher, except for the B and the E string, which are unisons.
Great.
So each of those, same thing. I use the 451 for the nylon string, and then the 414 for everything else, but put them appropriately where it sounded the best on the instrument, and then panned. So this is sort of it's an isolated tracks version of this without the entire band, so you can really hear it. This is Silent Night from my Christmas album, The Joyful Noise. So there's an example also. Now, and don't get the wrong idea, I also play rock and roll and all kinds of things and know how to dig in, but I thought it would be interesting from a technique point of view to get into things that had a little bit more subtlety and nuance. So I just did the math. I believe, well, I already forgot, 18, 19, 20. There's 26 strings that you just heard on those 4 instruments.
Nice.
3 guitars that have 6 strings, and then a mandolin has 8 strings. So you really need to be conscious of technique and frequency. And so otherwise, as one of the questions was earlier in our conversation, how do you deal with not having it be too boomy? High pass filters again, mic placement, using the right pick, the right fingering, thinking about whether I'm going to be right on the sound hole or a little bit further away. There's a big difference. I generally, again, I record anywhere from 6 to 12 inches from the mic. That's so, and it's to taste depending on what else is going on in the room.
Great.
And in the room, I mean this song. So those are a couple of audio examples.
Okay. Well, I know that we have one more thing that you'd like to get to, and that is your conversation about capo technique.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that before we play the video?
I do. So I use capos a lot. You know, in that last piece, and it's a perfect segue, there were 4 different instruments that I played. Literally. They were not just, even if I played 2 guitar parts, they were 2 separate guitars. So that's one way to get a variation of sound and frequency so that you're not repeating yourself. It's like if you're in a room and you're hearing a conversation of just me talking and everybody speaking in my frequency, or if you go into a room where there's a bunch of little kids, that's a better example, and they're all at a really high pitch and a pretty high volume, all you hear is noise. You hear clutter because it's all in the same frequency. Then when the teacher steps in and says, everybody be quiet, that's in a lower frequency.
Right.
And you hear it. It comes through because you're not crowding the freeway with the same frequency. So
Makes sense.
sometimes I use capo because I just love doing it. It opens up the guitar and creates all these different sounds. But another thing it does is it allows you to get more out of the instrument. So I'm going to give you a really quick example here, and then I'll show you a recorded example so you can hear and say. Here in the key of D, if we've got a D chord to a G chord. So there's that part. I'll lay that part down, and that's all really well and beautiful. And I go, I want to double that. Do I want to just double track it? Maybe. Or maybe I want to do something similar but different. So if I put the capo on the 2nd fret and play a C, it's like having a capo. Well, a capo, or it's like doing a bar chord. It is a capo. So I will do something similar, but it already sounds like a different instrument. So put those two together and pan them, and magic starts to happen. I'll do one more thing very, very quickly. If I go up to the 3rd fret, right here, so it's a great studio tool. Oops, I'm wrong. 4th fret. 5th fret. If I play an A chord at the 5th fret, it's going to be the same chord because, again, it's like a bar chord, but so I've just created basically an arrangement.
Right.
That's a little bit more of an orchestral arrangement. And again, we're here. It's just me on the guitar. It sounds all lovely and pretty and all that and beautiful and serene. And it does, but it can also sound really ballsy. Hi. Today we're talking about the use of a capo in the recording studio. The capo can give you some extra options that you might not have considered when you're playing your guitar parts. So it's always fun to switch instruments, but you can get a lot more out of a single instrument just by being creative with the use of the capo. Let me show you. We're going to layer 3 guitar parts. The first one without a capo. Here we go. Now we're going to add part 2. I have the capo at the 8th fret, and now I'm playing different chords so that we still end up in the same key. The capo that I use are made by Planet Wave Diodario, and I love them. They're very consistent. However, always check your tuning after you put the capo on just to make sure that you can fix any of the subtle nuances of strings that might not be exactly in tune. Here's the second part. Now we're going to add our third part. What I'm using is not a traditional capo, it's called a half capo, and it only covers 2 strings. So it's something that is used not very often. It's just an extra little tool that you can have in your arsenal to pull out, where you want to employ certain open strings and still use it not exactly like a regular capo. Basically, again, it's covering, I have it at the 5th fret, so it's just covering 2 notes. Everything else is ringing open from below it. So you just get another, you get some interesting colors that you wouldn't get with a regular capo. Here we go, part 3. So now let's listen to all 3 tracks together without the click track. And what I've done is part 1 is right in the middle, part 2 is pan to the left, part 3 is pan to the right. So everybody is in their own space and they get to work together and not interfere with each other. Take a listen. There you go. So this was all done on one guitar, my Taylor 912C, using a capo to really find different elements and flavors from one single instrument. Hope you enjoy. Go try it at home. So that gives you the idea of what it ends up like.
Yeah.
So use your imagination and use these tools and techniques and have fun with it. It's really about having fun. I've got 2 other tips, but I can say them very quick. The tip number 9, always serve the song. Melody is king, lyrics are the queen. So what I'm saying is whether you're playing instrumental music or vocal music, I still approach it all the same. But if there is a lyric to it, learn the lyric. Always learn the lyric to the song that you're playing so that you have a point of view on what to play and why. And just as an example, if you end up going to hear Silent Night, for example, from a Joyful Noise album, my Christmas album, I want you to know when you're listening to these melodies, there are a few vocal tunes on the album, but they're mostly instrumental arrangements that I've done of Christmas standards. Guess what I had on my music stand in front of me? The notes, chords? No, I had lyric sheets. I wanted to read the lyrics as I was playing the melodies so that I was really, and I already learned, I had memorized the lyrics, but I wanted that to be my guide if I was looking at anything.
Nice.
My last tip number 10, there is a wealth of information available to you online, especially now during this pandemic. There's TrueFire, there's Berkeley Online, YouTube. Tuck Andrus from Tuck and Patty is doing a Facebook Live Masterclass series. There's so many people like myself who are doing masterclasses, again, with the support of Cordial Cables and Blue Microphones. Thank you for creating this series. But most musicians right now are approachable and available, especially now during this pandemic. So take advantage. You know, reach out to an artist. If you're interested in learning from somebody, hit them up. You never know. Chances are more likely than not that they're going to be available to give you a FaceTime or Zoom lesson.
Right.
And again, there's a lot of things out there for free or for subscription that are available.
Let's do one last question, and
Okay.
it's from It is from Jeremy Gardner, and we're going to give him a double because he got cut off there
Great.
earlier. But he asks, "Who are your influences?"
Oh, I have so many. And that would be an hour-long conversation too.
Let's hit the top 10.
The top 10. I mean, the obvious: Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan. You know, the rockers. I absolutely love Jay Graydon, Dean Parks, Larry Carlton, Lee Ritenour. You know, the studio people, Tommy Tedesco,
Yeah,
the people that made all these amazing records that I have listened to and learned from. Those are my heroes. I also am a huge Earl Klugh fan. You know, for nylon guitar playing, Jonathan Butler is amazing.
right.
Uh, and you know, believe it or not, one of my favorite acoustic guitar players, as well as electric guitar players, who I already mentioned, is Larry Carlton.
Yeah,
He's the perfect example of what I spoke about earlier in this conversation. Do not approach the electric guitar and the acoustic guitar the same way. They're
yeah,
different animals.
yeah,
And Larry's a great example of that, and I hope I am as well. So
yeah.
those are some of my influences. And by the way, I could go on and on about composers, sax players, trumpet players, piano players that have also equally influenced me.
Don't you hate that when somebody asks you what your top 10 favorite records are, and you're like, "Really? You're going to make me choose 10? Only 10?
Right.
Get me a bigger island."
Right. Yeah. It would be a mix of classical music, uh, you know, certainly rock and blues. Uh, I suppose I would have some jazz in there. I'm not sure what I would pick, and absolutely at least one Joni Mitchell record.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, we come to a special part of our program. All right, Kevin, is your audio up?
I'm good to go. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Waiting my turn here. Yeah.
Terry,
Yes.
I have in front of me my phone with the feed of everybody who's commented. And that Melanie person, I don't know about her, but I don't know. I think she might not be eligible, right?
From this.
So we're going to ask you, let's see, how many do I have here? I have about 60 comments, I think. And I'm going to ask you for a number so I don't have to count too far down because obviously I'm technically challenged. I've proven that with this video. So give me a number between 1 and 25.
17. And that's because when I was 17, I had a lot of things happen in my life that sort of set the course of the rest of my life.
Do you know a lady named Carol Garcia?
I think I do.
Carol Garcia, I hope you're still listening because you are the winner of our giant prize package. So,
Carol,
giant, huge prize package. Carol Garcia, I will ping you. I'm going to put on right here. You won. And then I'll contact you later, Carol, on this feed. So you are the big winner. You won one of these, and a whole pile of, where's all my cables? Does anybody got a cable in here? Can somebody help with a cable? No. And then a whole pile of Cordial cables. We will figure out how to get those. And I wanted Kevin to be on here and everybody to say congratulations to Carol and to say a big thank you to everybody involved. Kevin, would you like to add anything to that?
Oh, just again, just truly an honor to be working with you guys. And Terry, thank you for including us, and congratulations on the win. Somebody's, she's going to be very happy.
Yeah, she is. She is going to be happy. And in closing, all I've got to say is, like Kevin and I were talking about earlier, we have the funnest job in the world. So yes. we get to just talk to these artists, and most of the guys that are doing this work that Kevin and I are doing, the artist relations stuff, are actually we're players too. So we love always getting the band together. We love hearing this stuff because they're techniques that we can use as well. So we really, really appreciate that, and everybody involved in it. And we love what we do, and we love making people happy with new gear and stuff. So,
Yes.
Terry, would you do a little close before we get on out of here, and just give us some final thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations again, Carol. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I could feel you and know that you're out there with us, and I appreciate your questions. I also want to say that I was really excited, Mike and Kevin, when you put this prize package together. This is the kind of package that I would want to win.
Yeah,
I was a little jealous that I actually wasn't eligible. Unfortunately, I already work with you guys and use the gear that you gave away, which is part of why we chose what we did, the three of us, because I wanted it to be tools that I use in my studio for making records, for making my own records, for making other people's records. I do a lot of remote recording, and certainly for my weekly podcast. As I said, Blue, you guys have been with me since the beginning of the podcast 3 years ago. And I've switched over to Cordial Cables, for all the mic cables, and so I couldn't do what I do without the support of the companies that I work with that not only help me but encourage me and guide me to sound the best that I can. And you guys know, because I've asked you all the time, which mic should I use? Where do I place it? Which cable is better for what I'm trying to do? What should I use live? What should I use in the studio? Same with my guitars, my amps, my strings. It's something that I really deeply appreciate and do not take for granted. It takes a village to sound good, and I really appreciate both of you, Cordial Cables, Blue Microphones, and I really appreciate that you also, like myself, are big believers in sharing information and teaching, mentoring.
Yep.
It's a big part of what we are all doing. And so I thank you guys both, Kevin and Mike, and everybody at both your companies.
Yeah, thank you guys. Awesome.
And
couple of last words, Kevin.
One more.
No, I just want to say, like you were mentioning about our jobs and what we do, we get to work with wonderful people like Terry, and it's just amazing. Like we were talking about, the most amazing job in the world. But I also encourage everybody that we also, at Blue, and you guys too, both, we get to work with people just starting the industry. It's going up through the chains. We here, I know at Blue, and you guys probably too here, is that we take everybody that we work with very seriously. So I just encourage everybody, man, just keep doing your thing, and things will happen.
Great. Well, I'd like to just close with another thank you. I want to remind people to check in with us and follow us here on Facebook for our weekly masterclass and events and giveaways. And also, if you're an Instagram person, we are doing weekly private lesson giveaways over there as well. Terry will be giving one of those here pretty soon. So you can get a lesson from a lot of the folks in our group of great artists, and you can see those pop up on our Instagram feed and our Facebook feed weekly. So with that, I don't know if there's much more to do but play out a little bit of Terry music on the way out of here. But I want to thank everybody that hung around with us. Carol, you got some stuff coming, and it's going to be awesome. So Terry, Kevin, thank you very much. Blue Microphones, thank you very much. I love this Yeti Pro. It's fantastic. I love the headphones. And we're going to have some fun later on. So everybody, enjoy yourselves. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Kevin. Bye-bye.
The new album is Cassini's Last Dance.
Cassini's Last Dance. Okay, see you guys later. Thanks a lot, everybody.